everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck, and I'm along with my coworker Jordan Bianchi. We are at the Chicago Street Race, and oh my gosh, Jordan, this is going to be a lot to unpack on this one. This was a weekend, and in fact, lots of firsts this weekend, including our first time we've ever done a podcast live from our hotel room. You were my roomie for the weekend. However, it is approaching midnight on the Central Time Zone here, and that is when the media center that we were using closes, because that's the Art Institute of Chicago. So given the late race, there was not going to be time to record our podcast there, so we walked back to our hotel, and now we are chilling on our separate beds.
Thanks for clarifying that. Appreciate that.
And that's why we're not doing a video this week either, by the way. Nobody wants to see two dudes lounging on their beds in the hotel room.
There's probably like what is it?
There's a market for that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not our bag. Anyway.
You need a few bucks.
So who knows where to start with this one, but for one thing, what a weekend. I mean, Jordan, we have anticipated this for a long, long time. And, I mean, give me your opening thoughts on what we just saw.
I mean, it was a lot. I mean, you didn't know what to expect coming into the weekend. I think there was a lot of, I don't want to say skepticism, because I felt like NASCAR proved with the LA Coliseum that they can do this to some degree. Now, this is a whole different animal, different beast. This is a street course in downtown Chicago versus an oval in a stadium, but there was some confidence that they're smart people, and they're not going to build something that's just going to be rickety and thrown together. But still, like, you come here and you don't know what it's going to be like, and then you see the course, and you're like, this is a street course. This is what every other street course looks like. This is professionally done. It's well done. It's a good layout, and it was a really well run, put together event. The city embraced it in large degree. I mean, everywhere you looked, you saw advertisements for the race. You saw merchandise for the race. You saw fans walking around the streets with the race. I didn't hear anything from one person who had anything critical to say about the race. Uber drivers I had who weren't NASCAR fans were raving about it. And one was bringing his dad, because he and his dad never been to a race before, and they wanted to go see it. That was cool to see. And so from that perspective, it was a huge, huge success. I mean, it was really hard to wrap your head around for the first couple days of just walking around and seeing the course come together and the final touches on it, and just seeing just sort of the energy around it, and people just fascinating, like people just stopping to take photos of the fences. And then, when the cars finally got on track and you're seeing all the people on top of the bus station and the train station awning, and, cutting the tarps that were on the fence outside the public areas to get a look through. I mean, and even inside the course, I mean, you saw those images and walking around of people 4, 5, 6 deep at some of the fences in the general admission areas, craning their necks, everybody with cell phones out just to see cars coming by through really the whole race. Yeah, and you had people looking out windows and buildings and stuff and everything. It was cool.
It was just, everything that you would think. And here's the thing too, like we go to cities all the time, right? Where, you say, oh, what are you in town for? Oh, the NASCAR race. Oh, that's this weekend or whatever. Or they don't even have no idea where it is. But, and I'm talking about like, pretty major markets, not just out in the middle of nowhere or something. Like people don't always know that NASCAR's coming. There was no mistake. I mean, this entire city, it felt like they knew. Now, a lot of that was because people had seen negative coverage over, they're moving the Taste of Chicago, or they're shutting down Michigan Avenue for the weekend, and they're shutting down Lakeshore Drive, and here's how you're going to have to reroute. And so some of it was, people weren't feeling good about it, but people knew about it. I didn't encounter anybody through the weekend, restaurants or whatever we went to, people were like, what's going on? Why are you here? Everybody's like, oh yeah, they knew what was going on.
And they didn't speak out bad about it. I mean,
no one we encountered.
No one we encountered. And there was no protests. There didn't seem to be any backlash surrounding the event, at least from what I saw and heard. So it was cool to see, and it was great. And then the race itself, I think we all kind of had kind of thought it might be a crash fest, and that, especially going into the turn 1 and some of the other 90-degree tight turns, that there was going to be, turn 6, that actually was the case, the Noah Gragson corner. But I mean, it wasn't the huge crash fest that we kind of anticipated. Now, you had the one big pile up in turn 11, but that was it, and that happens, and it was not a big deal. And it, and the track, that it was wet a little bit too, I think probably helped to some degree, because drivers had to kind of temper down a little bit, and they had to be a little bit more careful. And I thought you largely saw a pretty professional race considering the conditions.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the racing was way better than we thought it was going to be, or at least I thought it was going to be. I had pretty low expectations, and I thought it was either going to be, a case where it was really strung out and it would just be, the leader would be up 20 seconds and nobody would be able to do anything. Or, like you said, it was going to be a crash fest. They wouldn't even be able to barely make it around the course. There were so many 90-degree corners, and we knew that if there was one incident with any cars around, the track would be blocked. This race was far more professional than, say, COTA.
Oh yeah, Indy.
Oh yeah, Indy road course for sure. And this race was a lot more entertaining than, say, like Sonoma. You'd have to check me on this because you have better memory, but I would say this was the best road course type race with the next gen car so far.
Yeah, the only one. I mean, you'd have to go back to COTA last year. I don't remember off the top of my head. The finish that COTA race with Chastain and Allmendinger.
That was a great finish,
but I don't remember the race itself.
Yeah.
But I mean, there wasn't a lot of passing for the lead tonight. I mean, there was a few, but there wasn't a ton of lead changes. But there still was a lot of passing.
I mean, look, Shane Van Gisbergen, who we're obviously going to talk about here in a little bit, due to the way that pit strategy unfolded with the shortened race, and again, we're going to get to that, he had to restart 18th after his final pit stop, and he drove all the way up through the field.
Yes, he did.
So...
And we saw Chastain come from the back.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that... I mean, I'm sure that... Look, yeah, there wasn't a ton of passing for the lead, for sure. But bottom line is you could pass. He passed.
Oh, you could definitely make pass. There was a lot more. Denny Hamlin said this, some other drivers did as well. There were a lot more passing zones than they thought there were going to be.
Yeah.
And that was good.
I think, in general, the drivers came into this weekend knowing they were going to have to respect the track, because they all talked about it. They were saying they couldn't even see buildings while they were driving, because they were so focused on those walls on either side of them and the barriers and how tight and narrow that course was. You had to be so mentally sharp and so focused the entire time on you had to respect that course, and it was intimidating for them. And the surface changes and the sliding around, you had to be so precise. They didn't have time to do some crazy stuff where you run into another car and you bounce off each other and run off the track. And it was all they could do to not hit the walls and not go in the tire barriers. We saw some of the best drivers in NASCAR getting buried in the tires. I mean, Kyle Busch, Tyler Reddick, who, when he was in position for the race, gets in the tires.
Martin Truex Jr., who won the last road course race, bounced off the wall a few times tonight.
Yeah, he had several incidents. Chase Elliott had an incident. William Byron, who's a great road course racer, he was in position on his strategy where he could have been the leader. Eventually had it shaken out, and he bends it into the wall, and that was the one that started that turn 11 pileup. It was a challenging course, but guess what? That's great, because we want to see these guys challenged. We don't want to see it so easy. Some of these road courses where, they kind of just bounce off each other and they can go wide. I mean, COTA, for instance, has so much room, right, till you hit a wall. And they kind of race accordingly sometimes there, right? And because they're like, well, I can get away with this, or I can overstep the corner and I'll just go off here. And I mean, they knew this had very little runoff. There was no margin for error. So, they had to race really smart, and I think that was reflected in the racing. But I think it was very, for the most part, great, clean racing. Like you said, professional. Again, if you were watching this somewhere around the world and you saw this race, that was good. I think that NASCAR put on a good show. NASCAR put on an impressive show of talent. You weren't like, oh my God, these guys can't drive.
Their skill was on full display. Because there was some challenging sectors of this course. The carousel section where you really carried a lot of speed through there, we saw all weekend how it was a really easy spot to lose control. And you could see these drivers wheeling this car, especially because it was wet too, which helps. There was two things in the race that I thought also helped, which probably need to be implemented at other road courses across the board. One, single file restarts.
Mm-hmm.
It gets rid of the double file stuff, it gets rid of dive bombs, bunches everybody up, and then that restart zone moved earlier into the previous corner. Big win, and it spreads out the field enough. We talked at COTA, like, something has to be done. What can you do? Is it really a good solution? We saw tonight that this is the solution, and if you want to eliminate these kind of crazy, zany, sometimes clown show-esque pileups in corners like we see so often at COTA and Indy, this is the way probably to do it.
Yeah, I mean, drivers this weekend, Chase Elliott among them, was still talking about how embarrassing COTA was. COTA, Elliott was like, I wasn't there, I watched it on TV, but that's not the kind of racing we need to be putting on, those restarts, And like you said, I think this was a pretty fair solution to it in a way, like moving the restart zone back and then having single file restarts. Again, it didn't take away from, the action for me. It just reduced like the wackiness of it. And look, you still had incidents. You still had an overtime tonight, but it wasn't. Once you got to the overtime, it didn't devolve into some stupid chaotic thing where you're just like, this is just silly now. After a respectable race, this just turned bad. I mean, it was fine. So, I mean, I think that whatever you thought the racing was going to be for a street course for NASCAR, to me, like I would have thought that this would exceeded most expectations of what people were anticipating and fearful of and all that stuff.
You didn't hear anything about the next-gen car and how hard it was to drive on street and road courses. This was probably the first time in the next-gen era where that hasn't been uttered. And you saw a race tonight where the drivers were pushed and tested. You saw a deserving winner. You saw a good battle at the end there. You saw hard racing. You saw you saw the typical NASCAR contact that is supposed to be synonymous with NASCAR and road courses. This checked a lot of boxes.
And really, again, going back to, and again, we'll get to the rain and all that stuff later too. And but just going back to the atmosphere, like the whole point of this race, obviously, right, was to bring this to a city center, to bring it to people, to show off NASCAR as a product, to show, look, you may have heard about NASCAR, you may have preconceived notions of NASCAR. Here it is. It's right in front of you. It's right on Michigan Avenue, one of the most famous streets in America. It's right on Lakeshore Drive, famous Chicago street, right next to, just beautiful, right? Grant Park,
picturesque,
Buckingham Fountain, all this stuff, right? And you're seeing NASCAR cars go around these places where tomorrow, by the time most people are listening to this podcast, Michigan Avenue is going to be open again.
Yeah, they've already started the teardown.
It's so just that was obviously unprecedented for NASCAR history, 75 years. And to just see that they pulled this off, it's monumental. NASCAR spent easily, I think it's fair to say, in excess of $50 million on this.
Yep.
And like you said, the course looked beautiful. It was well done. It was highly professional. It wasn't something like it got slapped together or something. And not that you would have expected that, but they did it right. They did the suites right. They did the fan areas right. Like, and this is NASCAR's first time doing it. It's not like they're F1 where they have all this experience, or even IndyCar, with their experience at Long Beach, St. Pete, Nashville now. This was NASCAR's first shot at it, and I thought they knocked it out of the park. Again, the weather really, really hampered them and looked for a while there like it was going to be bad. And I do want to save that for a little bit later in the show, but just kudos, honestly, like to the people that pulled this off, the people that were behind this. This, to me, is one of the top achievements, at least since I've been around in NASCAR. This was huge. This was probably the most difficult thing that, like you mentioned the Coliseum earlier. I think that was really cool. This had echoes of it, and that you see it, and you're like, wow, they really did this. But this was way way harder.
This is a race course in downtown Chicago, which is challenging enough unto itself. Plus, you throw in the politics and everything else, and then doing something you've never done before, and they did it, and they deserve all the credit in the world. Now, I think largely the things that they can control, they knocked it out of the park. You can quibble here and there, and then once the weather came, it's hard. I mean, that was really unfortunate. It kind of puts a little bit of a pin in the balloon, but overall, I don't know how you couldn't be complimentary of this and look at this and say, this was great. This was a win, and this is something we need to do again. Not necessarily more of, as in like we need to have more than one on the schedule, but why can't you have one street course race a year, whether it's in Chicago or somewhere else?
Oh, for sure. I mean, if this was truly being billed as a proof of concept race, right? Like,
and it was,
and just like the Coliseum was. Could we do this? Could this work? This to me worked better actually than the Coliseum race. Like, this was more of a true race. This was raceable. Where the Coliseum, it's cool. It's a cool little spectacle, but you can't really race that well there. But yeah, this, I mean, like Steve O'Donnell said after the race, they sort of have the confidence now. They could really take NASCAR anywhere. I mean, you want to do a street race in London, whatever, wherever you can get to agree with what you want to do. They know they know how to do it. At least they know where to start, and they're going to learn a lot from this too. I mean, they're only going to get more knowledge from this weekend. So I would definitely expect that you're going to see a street race on the calendar permanently now in NASCAR. Every year there's going to be at least one, right?
I mean, I wouldn't say permanently for, I think going forward for the next foreseeable future, definitely. I mean, I'm curious to see whether that's Chicago again next year. That's the big unknown. If you ask NASCAR, they absolutely want to come back here. Why would you not? This is the third largest, media market in this country, and this is what you want to do. It's a great setting. You have a course that works. So NASCAR coming back like next year seems, from their perspective, like a slam dunk. Now it'll be interesting to see what the city says, because we know the backstory there, and there's a lot of pushback from them. You would hope that the city looks at this and say, listen, they came in here, they did what they said they were going to do, and they fulfilled everything that they said, and they didn't make a mess. They cleaned up after themselves, right? And they brought fans here, they brought excitement, they brought attention here. We want them back, and we'll see how this goes. And they have a 3-year contract, but you know how those contracts go.
And look, we can't go much further at all without mentioning Julie Giese. If you're not aware of who she is for whatever reason, she was most recently the Phoenix Raceway track president. Before that, huge key person in Daytona Rising, the Richmond renovation, things like that.
Talladega.
Yeah, I mean, she has been a key person who is being trusted more and more and more, right, by NASCAR. And we were talking, I mean, we can't even have imagined somebody else being in this position to pull this off. I mean, you just trust in her so much because she's so detail oriented. She's worked in every phase. When you do something like Daytona Rising, you learn all about the construction stuff and all the various things that go into it. And having been a track president then, all that side of it. So she has the perfect skill set to do it. And you just knew that she was going to come through. Like, it just felt like, I mean, she's sort of the Shane Van Gisbergen of...
I call her the fixer.
The fixer, yeah.
Yeah, like, where NASCAR's priority is. Daytona Rising was their huge priority for a few years. So guess what she did? She was leading, part of the team in that. And then it was, we got a big renovation project at Richmond and Talladega. Guess what? She was there leading that. Oh, by the way, we want to move the championship to Phoenix, and that's going to require a lot of renovation there. Guess what? She went out there. And then she was named president of Chicago, because that's a huge deal. And I tell her this, and it's kind of well known in the industry, is like, you want to know where NASCAR's priority is, like their next big thing, just follow her, because that's where she's going to be.
I mean, and they're lucky to have her. I mean,
100%. I mean, when you go to a great school like the University of Wisconsin River Falls, they produce nothing but amazing, talented individuals. And kudos to that fine academic institution for producing a star like her.
Where did you go to school, Jordan?
Coincidentally, we went to the same college, UWRF.
Okay.
I know. It's funny how that works.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I hope they invite us back to maybe we can speak at commencement or something.
Yeah. Not both of you.
Why?
One of you.
Oh,
the one named Julie. You're too busy doing your best work on Saturday nights to be invited.
I did a lot of great work there on Saturday nights at UWRF.
Oh God! Oh my God! Anyway, back to Julie. Yeah, I just feel like I would have confidence in her. Whatever NASCAR project, whatever they imagined was going to come, like or anything in life, I'd just be like, put her in charge. She's going to get it done. She's going to have every base covered. And if she doesn't, it will immediately get fixed for the next time. And there's really no doubt. So I think that was a huge part to this going off as planned. Obviously, I mean, she has tons of people helping her too that really dedicated a lot of their life over the last year doing this, especially the last few months. This was an intense build that had to go right, and they had to get it right. And again, like I can't say it enough, they pulled it off. That was an achievement in itself. So let's talk about the race and who won, because Shane Van Gisbergen. Are you going to say his name?
No, I'm horrible at pronouncing names, and I'm not even going to try because I know I'm going to butcher it, and you'll laugh, and people are going to ridicule me. So,
well, the broadcast had their own troubles with that.
And you know what? I get it. That's why I don't mock them for butchering names, because I'm horrible. So,
well, he's also called SVG. So,
okay, I'm just going to call him Shane because it's really easy.
Shane,
it rolls off the tongue.
Just call him SVG
because I will probably screw that up as well.
It's 3 letters.
It rolls too quick. No, it won't sound good.
Okay, so SVG, look, Trackhouse announces him as a Project 91 driver. The first 2 races they had done, with Kimi Räikkönen. Kimi, obviously, F1 world champion, gets a ton more buzz, right? They're like, oh yeah, this 3-time Supercars champion is going to come over. That's cool. I mean, that's cool, right? I mean, look, it's cool, and maybe he'll have a better shot to win than Kimi, or at least a better chance to run well, right? Because we know that Supercars, I mean, he said tonight, for pretty much half our schedule, we run street courses, and I'm used to running in between those barriers. And certainly when we talk about drivers coming from different disciplines, we know Supercars in Australia are maybe the closest thing to NASCAR stock cars, right? In the way that they race. I mean, that's why Marcus Ambrose had a lot of success on road courses when he was able to come over. This is not open wheel driver jumping into a stock car. You know what I mean? This is something that's a lot closer. So when you put those things together, you could say, well, okay, yeah, maybe he'll get a top 10. That would be even a stretch, really, because
and that would be a success. So no Littleman track time, never been in this car before, part-time team. Yeah, top 10 would be a win almost.
That would be huge. I mean, Räikkönen didn't.
No.
I mean, just anybody that comes in. I mean, Jenson Button. It's extremely hard. We've seen it over and over again. In fact, we talked about, and drivers have said, Harvick has been outspoken about it in the last few years. Yeah, road course ringers aren't a thing anymore. You've heard that storyline, because people always used to say, "Oh, the ringers." Boris said, and then they went away because NASCAR drivers started doing so many road courses. The road course ringers couldn't come in and beat them anymore.
No, I mean, drivers could no longer throw away those races where there were so many in the schedule, and the fact that win and get in, you needed to do well. If you need to get a win, this is your opportunity. So they got more reps. They've gotten better. They put an emphasis on it, and that is why you have not seen road course drivers, Boris said, Scott Pruitt, Ron Fellows come in and win poles or run in the top 3 and 4 and look like they might get a win. Now, road course racer has not won a Cup Series race since 1973, so the narrative that these guys come in and dominate is a little overblown. But there was a time when Fellows, Pruitt, and said were again They're winning poles. They're running up front, and they look like they have a chance to win.
So, realistically, I don't think this just doesn't happen, right? What we just saw tonight doesn't happen. It doesn't. You just don't have outsiders come into the Cup Series and do well. I mean, again, like Jordan Taylor at Coda and things like that. Guys in fast cars, it just doesn't happen. But it did. It just did. I mean, for the first time in our lifetime, a driver has come into NASCAR in the Cup Series and won his first start.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And he did it flawlessly. I mean, he had a great qualifying. He came with speed from the start. He had a great qualifying. He qualified P3 and felt like he left a little time out there, but he was fast immediately. All the drivers were buzzing about seeing his footwork on that camera,
That was really cool to watch him, though.
It was.
The foot camera.
I mean, Kyle Larson's like, I can't do that. And if that's what it takes to run in supercars, I guess I'll never be able to run supercars because there's no way that I could ever do that.
Mm-hmm.
No way. And obviously he's extremely talented. We already know that he's one of the best drivers in the world, but he just came out and proved it. And I think that, look, Chase Elliott saying, hey, he kind of made us look stupid. He made us look bad. And I get that there's that narrative. But Larson also said, like, this isn't embarrassing at all. This is a elite driver who is amazing at road courses and has way more road course experience than everybody else. Street courses. So way more street course than everybody else. And in a car that's somewhat similar, there's no shame in losing to him. There's no shame at all. I think, look, it's actually cool for NASCAR. They were able to get one of the best drivers in the world to come over, especially in his discipline. He jumped in. They held their own. The drivers held their own, but he was better. The best driver won.
You don't think that's a little... I mean, you don't think that's a little like this guy rolls in, no experience, never been in one of these cars, again, part-time team, limited track time, and he comes in, qualifies well, which we've seen, Jordan Taylor qualified well when he ran, but comes in and his racecraft is just head and shoulders above everyone else, and at the end he's making moves that are just, I mean, he's passing Chase Elliott, he's passing a Kyle Busch, and he comes in and just runs away with the win. That's just not like a little bit of like, oh, our drivers, man, we got a little bit of work to do.
No, because it's a street course. If it had been on a road course, I'd feel differently, honestly.
Okay.
I'd be like, wow. Like, wait a minute. We thought these guys were pretty good on road courses.
But like, where was AJ Allmendinger today?
Well, I mean, you could say the same thing about Sonoma, I guess.
He ran in the top 5 at Sonoma.
Yeah. I mean, he was in the top 10 for a while.
I don't know. Yeah.
But I think street courses are a different beast, right? And there's no shame in losing to the most experienced guy, truly world-class talent, 3-time Supercars champion who does this all the time. Now, granted, on a different side of the car, for one, and in a different car and in different surfaces. He was talking about
and different. Degrees. Different numerology.
Oh, you mean the metric system?
Yeah, metric. Thank
stuff,
you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, it's late.
Look, I mean, I really don't. If the Cup Series drivers had a bunch of street course experience under their belt, and somebody came in and beat them, that's weird. If somebody came in on an oval and beat them, that's humiliating, right? You know what I'm saying? Like in their own discipline. If like a non-oval, like let's say Lewis Hamilton came in and did an oval race and won, even though he's Lewis Hamilton, that's embarrassing. You know what I'm saying? And again, to a road course to a degree, I think you could make that argument that, wait a minute now, they shouldn't be able to do this. But no, a street course, for the first time they're all running it, and then again, like he's exceptional.
I don't take anything away from him. I mean, he is exceptional. He is a world-class talent. I think there is a little bit of like, this is maybe I think there was a definite impression tonight of like, whoa, like this guy versus our guys aren't on that level.
Not on street courses.
No, but that's what we're talking about, and I think that's a little bit of a,
But why would people expect them to be on that level if they've never done it before?
Because we talk about Kyle Larson being one of the greatest active drivers in all disciplines, right? And be able to hop in anything, anywhere, and do it.
But this is literally the first time Kyle Larson has ever driven.
Kyle Larson has been in a lot of different cars on a lot of different tracks for the first time and done it. And yeah, it's a different beast. But again, it wasn't like he was the only guy in this field that, again, AJ Allmendinger's raced on this. Michael McDowell's raced on this. I have to look at the list. There's probably other guys that have had some experience. At the end, it wasn't even close. It was like he was toying with them.
No, and I think I saw a stat. I think it was Avery Hage tweeted it. That like his fastest lap was 0.8 of a second better than the next closest driver, and even his third fastest lap was like 0.3 of a second better. So like he kicked everybody's butt. But again, okay, so let's say this. Let's say NASCAR inevitably someday does an ice race, okay? And what? I'm serious.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, they were going to do one in Europe, so I guess they shouldn't laugh.
That's they're going to race on every surface.
No, they literally, whenever they announced it, they were going to do it in Europe this year.
Yeah. Well,
and then
that got canceled.
Yeah, no, I understand it got canceled, but they were actually planning to do it.
Or was it Pinty Series?
It was in Europe. It was in Europe.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so let's say there's going to be an ice race, and none of the Cup drivers have ever raced on ice before, and Project 91.
Well, Paul Menard, if that happens, Paul Menard needs to be in the Project 91 car.
Okay, let's just say an ice racer who has no NASCAR experience but has raced on ice a lot comes in, and they're like, hey, we're going to put you in the car. And let's say he wins. He waxes everybody. Does that mean that the drivers aren't... Do we think there's any less talent because of that? I say no, because they're not used to it. I mean, Joey Logano this weekend, he looked... Saturday after qualifying, he said, this is one of the hardest things I've ever done in a race car. I mean, this was extremely difficult for them. So I just think you sort of found Justin Marks, it got exactly the right guy for this.
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
And it worked out perfectly. Even Justin, though, said, with late race restarts and all the chaos that comes with that and pit stops, I mean, those were the things that were more sort of concerning or worrisome to him, not having a good day or something going wrong. But look, I mean, the guy's just good. He's freaking good. Let's just shout, give him a shout out and say, tip your hat and say,
I don't want to take anything away from what he did. He is great. He is phenomenal. If I'm Justin Marks, I'm doing everything I can to put him in my car full time in 2025.
But okay, so you say that, and I get that people would be very interested in his talents after what they just saw, but even SVG said tonight, like, hey, put me on an oval and these guys are going to kick my butt, right? Like, so there is a pathway, like we've talked about with AJ Allmendinger kind of thing, right? Where if you go win one of those road courses, you're in. But let's see him on a road course too. We don't even know if he would do as well on a road course as he did on a street course. I bet he would. I mean, I bet he'd be pretty good, but I'm not saying he's going to go win. I think this was sort of an exceptional circumstance in some ways. But I don't know. It sounds like he wants to come to NASCAR, and I don't blame him. But I think there's other drivers. I mean, to me, I was watching a lot of his stuff this weekend and going, man, if he could do this, I bet Scott McLaughlin, who was also a 3-time Supercars champion, and is obviously an IndyCar now, like, he could do this. And SVG said tonight, like, hey, the top 10 drivers in Supercars are all talented enough that they could do what I did also tonight. So, and I don't doubt that. I really don't. Like, I think that the people, and again, it's what discipline you're used to. It's not a shot at anybody in NASCAR. It's what you're used to. So, when you drive a flawless race, I mean, when he got to third, we were talking about what stories we're going to do. When he got to third, you said, "Oh, what if I do a story on Haley or whatever?" And I'm not trying to, take a dig at you at all, but I just said, you're not going to be doing a story on Haley. You're going to be just doing a story on SVG. SVG is going to win. Like, it was, to me, the speed at which he moved up through the field, it was very obvious. Like, he was in complete control. He was not going to make a mistake. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was damn good,
He was great. I mean, he didn't turn a wrong wheel all weekend. He was very smooth, and he was very patient in a race where it had been very easy to be over aggressive, and one wrong move is going to put you to the wall, and he didn't. He was flawless, and he really executed at the end extremely well in the restarts. And he had to pass Haley twice, by the way, because three times actually, because passed him once, then the caution came out, then he passed him. And then Haley, to his credit, made a really good move to kind of come back on him, but then he pushed too hard, and then Shane, see, I'm using Shane, went right by him again. So just really, really impressive. And then managed the late restart well too, and just got a flawless restart and pulled away, and it was over.
So Justin Haley, finishes P2, and he had a rough start to the weekend. Wrecked, started last, and he was talking about how last night, Saturday night, he had to put half the wrap on the car on himself to help fix the damage. He was talking about look, Kaulig Racing, we don't get the Chevy support that the other teams do. He only got 20 minutes on the simulator on Thursday night at 9 p.m. before coming to Chicago, and he finished second. And I thought he did a fantastic job because, look, obviously he was one of the beneficiaries of getting his track position flipped because he had pitted really early like Chase Elliott did, and then they end up shortening the race because of darkness and saying, okay, it's going to end on lap 75, and he didn't need to pit again. So, he inherits that track position, right? But it wasn't like he got up there and then fell back. I mean, he had Dylan and Chase Elliott behind him. Dylan ends up crashing himself while chasing Haley. Haley was on old tires and really respectably ran with SVG for the win. I mean, there's nothing Haley could have done differently.
No.
In that situation, when you take,
he was a sitting duck and he did everything he could.
I mean, the 91 was probably a better car. It had way fresher tires, and again, a completely world-class experienced driver behind the wheel. So there's no shame in losing that. But I mean, Haley, that's a big statement for him. I think he's looking for a ride, or at least in contract negotiations, or doesn't know what his future is at the very least. And for him to come out and do that. That's big. He needs stuff like that.
He's a talented driver. I'm really high on him. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think in the right situation, he could do really big things. And it was a rough start to this year for Kaulig. They have righted the ship in the last 6 to 7 weeks or so, and he's running more consistently. AJ Allmendinger's turned the corner as well, but he didn't have to have a moment like this and to hold your own and not falter. And Dylan was hounding him. Been really easy to turn a bad wheel, and he didn't, and he was smooth, and he gave it everything he had at the end, and there is no shame in falling short. He is a driver who is, as Chris Rice, the president of Team Kaulig, told me, he's a franchise guy. He's a guy that you build your team around as an organization that you want to have, and his contract is up, and he doesn't know what's going to happen. Kaulig wants to re-sign him, and he wants to re-sign with Kaulig, but how these things go, and so we'll see. But that's as we've talked a lot about silly season and stuff. That's a name to keep an eye on, because this is a kid who is very talented. Who, when you put him in the right situation, has done it more often than not.
I think Chase Elliott certainly was fortunate as well. Held his own, but there was a time. I mean, he had a rough weekend. He was off in practice, then crashes, puts his team behind, crashed again in the race, and you're just like, wow, this is not going well for him. Again, though, he's able to pit, gets is the recipient of a lot of yellow flags that allow them to stretch their fuel to the end, and obviously flipping the track position, and he's able to stay up there. So he shaves more points off now. And I'll tell you what else. If you're Elliott, you are very, 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 very happy, or you should be, that SVG won.
Then Haley.
Haley.
Yeah, it's one less time. That's why when Elliott was racing him, I was like, and he's like, if just let him go, because he otherwise, if you hold him up, Haley may run away a little bit more, and that gap may not close. You don't need Haley to win. It is in your best interest, if you can't win yourself, that 91 car gets in victory lane, because otherwise your path to the playoffs just got harder.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any intentions of trying to make it on points, which again seems still very possible, it's now within.
It's not very possible. It's not possible. It's not very possible.
He shaved more points off tonight.
I don't.
It's down in the 50s.
It's not very possible that he's going to do it, though. It is possible, but it's still a remote chance.
I don't have it in front of me, but
I just looked. I was our colleague,
55 points or something.
Yeah, our colleague and I, Dustin Long, were like, joke. Did you hear us making fun of you tonight?
Yeah, you were making fun of me when he was running 30 something. Guess what? He finished third.
Yeah, that's great. He still has to win. Like he has to be.
He doesn't have to win.
I will, in my opinion, he is going to have to win to make the playoffs. He will have to be flawless.
Right now, I'm seeing that he now has to gain. If my math is correct, which it's often not, he needs to gain 6.8 points per race. So less than 7 points per race on 16th place, whoever is that.
Okay, we literally had this conversation last week. I'll just say the same thing again. You're assuming that he is going to finish in the top 10 and run as well as he is this weekend as he did last week for the rest of the way, which means he cannot have a bad race, which means when you go to today, he was great, but he also struggled and a lot of things had to go his way and it worked out. Then you go to Atlanta, you got a Daytona, and you got an Indy, which are 3 wild card tracks. He can't have a misstep the rest of the way. Plus, he can't have somebody else outside of the playoffs win to steal a spot, because then that line moves up even more. So, yeah, could he point his way in? Yeah, I mean, technically, sure. Absolutely. Is it likely? No.
16th place as of tonight is Ty Gibbs.
Yeah.
Because Suarez fell out because Suarez was going to be in great shape, running top 5 most of the day. Obviously, his teammate won and hit the wall, and I guess I don't know what happened after that, but he ended up finishing 20-something.
He had some brake issues, apparently.
And that really, really hurt him and cost him a lot of points. So he slipped out. Alex Bowman, who also was, he was right near Suarez. I think he came in 17th. That wasn't his fault. He was running. I think he got turned by Denny Hamlin going into 11. Hamlin might have gotten hot or something, and Bowman apparently did something to the engine when he spun, and he got a low oil warning.
They did like a factory reset or something.
Yeah, they tried to bypass the low oil warning, and then the engine blew. So that hurt. So he finished last, and so now again, I don't have in front of me. We're doing this in our hotel room or whatever, but I think he's 20th in points now or something, or something pretty low. So that didn't hurt him. But again, so I'm bringing this up because you're telling me, like, if you say to me, okay, can Chase Elliott outrun Ty Gibbs by an average of 7 spots for the next 8 weeks, and you're saying he cannot do that?
I'm saying that the margin of error that Chase Elliott has is minimal.
No, but that's not what I'm asking. I get that. Of course, I agree his margin of error is minimal. But will Chase Elliott outrun Ty Gibbs by an average of 7 spots per race?
Not gonna, the line is going to move up. So whatever it is now, it is.
You're not answering my question.
Yes, I am answering.
If there's no new winners.
So you didn't ask the question the right way. You want to answer the answer?
I
Ask
don't
it the
think
right
there's
way.
going to be. I don't think there's going to be a winner from outside.
You don't think there's going to be a winner outside? Oh, see, I do. We got too many. You're going to get one along the way. It just happens. It's like we get at least one. So
Well,
no, I mean
tonight was a wild card and didn't count for the playoffs, did it?
no, it didn't. It didn't. Maybe that's the one. Maybe that is the one. We'll see. Isn't it weird that you get a weird?
That's going to be a different winner, but it's a one-off winner who won't even race the rest of the season. So
yeah. Maybe we'll come do the All-Star race next year at North Wilkesboro. He's eligible.
Yeah, but he's not going to be good on an oval.
It'd be fun. That'd be great. Make your oval track debut at the All-Star race.
You got to have a car. You got to have a sponsor. I mean, that's another thing about how hard that was. Like that was a third team that only runs like 2 races a year. Justin Marks said they don't have any other Project 91 races planned right now. I mean, to pull, and he says they don't hire anybody for that team. It's people in the shop doing other jobs.
Yeah.
And that would be another reason to doubt. I mean, we were talking about, Jimmy Johnson. He's going to be at a third car at times for Legacy. Well, that's not going to go well because how good can a third car, as competitive as these guys are, guys that don't even do it regularly, like pit crew and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, pretty impressive. But anyway, who else? What other performances jumped out at you tonight? Obviously, Kyle Busch had a heck of a comeback to be stuffed into the barriers. Had to be pulled out, and I mean, he was the first one to hit it really hard.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the top 6. You had actually 4 of the top 6. So Haley had his issues in practice and qualifying, right? And then Elliott had his issues. Kyle Busch ended up in the tire barriers, ended up a lap down today, came back and finished 5th. And then Austin Cindric had himself a day yesterday where he bounced off the wall a few times, and he rallies back to finish 6th. And Joey Logano finished 8th. He ended up in the tire barrier. So, yeah.
But see, a lot of those guys benefited from this strategy, which I didn't get a chance to read Kelly Crandall's article yet, but I think she went and talked to Adam Stevens, Christopher Bell's crew chief, and I think he used the word negligence on NASCAR's part by calling the race shorten when they did. But they gave notice after a pit stop, and that really upset some of the teams. Now, SVG was in that situation, same situation as Bell, and still overcame it and won the race, right? But okay, that was one of Steve O'Donnell's points. But listen, I mean, I don't know if there's a fair way to do it, but at some point it was obvious that there wasn't going to be enough light to do it. The race got started late because of the rain, about an hour late, right? And they were running out of laps. I mean, there wasn't going to be enough time to do 100 laps. So they said, okay, let's do 75 laps. You got to make the call at some point, because if you wait too long, they do the thing before, like at Talladega, Indianapolis, the Brickyard 400, where they just keep waiting and waiting, and it's dark and dark and dark and dark. And at some point they just go, okay, it's too dark, and then the race is over, right? So would you rather them wait until it's too dark, or say, okay, there's this, it's going to end on this lap. We're going to try to make it to this lap.
I think they did it the right way. And I will say this, as a crew chief, you've kind of got to be aware of this. We knew this watching the race. We were talking about it before NASCAR, but long before NASCAR made a decision. I think you tweeted about it even, but we were all discussing it like this. You're doing the math. This isn't going to be a full distance race. It can't. It's almost mathematically impossible the way they're going for it to be. So as a crew chief, how do you not recognize that, right? And to Kyle Busch's team's credit, guess what Randall Burnett did? He recognized this and said, I need to get my driver in here, and because we're going to try to use this to our advantage. And so, yeah, it sucks. It bit some teams, but that's part of it, is looking at the situation and figuring out and anticipating what you think is going to happen. And you could see where this was going. And I don't feel... I think NASCAR they handled it about as well as you could considering the circumstances.
This is what Kyle Busch said. He said, we had a hand dealt to us late there in the going where we thought about the race getting shortened and pitting and getting ahead of some of those guys. So we did that, and we were able to flip the field and get ourselves back up to the front. So I asked him, so that was intentional where you guys were thinking, okay, it's going to be shortened, so let's pit now. And Kyle said, yeah, exactly. We were on the radio talking about that. I was like, you guys need to stop talking about this so much. Just do it, because we're going to give it away and have everybody follow suit. He went on to say that he was hoping that they'd be the only ones that did it, but there was about 6 or 7 of them that did it. And I think there was actually 9 of them. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, that was unfortunate. I mean, look, I hate it for Christopher Bell, right? Because he was dominating the race. And he was in complete control of it. And then once that happened, he was, he gets in some incidents and that's it. So the race is screwed. But I also think I just don't know of a better way to do it. And I would rather see NASCAR give plenty of advance notice than try to just wait and then say, oh, it's too, whose definition is it of too dark when they're asking people, can you still see? And, they just did that at Talladega a few years ago. So, I don't know.
The Brandon Brown one.
The Brandon Brown. That's right. And then wasn't Casey Kane's win
2017 at Indianapolis?
Yeah, that was
just not. That was restart after restart after restart.
Right. And it was getting dark and all that. But anyway, yeah, it definitely affected the race, but I don't know. I don't see necessarily a better way to do that. Maybe I'll probably listen to some of the other podcasts this week and people say, well, they could have done this. And I'll say, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. But I don't know. In the moment, I think they made the right call. Now, look, you want to talk about other controversial calls? Or
fire away.
So another one that was, and I don't mean to jump around too much, but so the Xfinity Series situation was odd, right? Because their race, I guess, well, let's back up for a second. Saturday, everything was going well. It was a sunny day. The smoke had largely cleared out that what people were worried about early in the week. And things were going well. Practice, qualifying, for both series, it turned out they could race the course. They were not wrecking every corner. It was actually okay. They get 20 whatever laps into the Xfinity race, and a storm pops up that was a thunderstorm, but it was going to go sort of north of downtown, it seemed like, but there was a lightning strike within that 8-mile radius that we talk about so much, which is NASCAR's policy to stop the race. So NASCAR says, okay, lightning strike, it's 2 laps short of halfway, stop the cars. Well, I guess the city's policy, which NASCAR knew about, the city's policy is if there's severe weather in the area, we're going to go ahead and evacuate the entire park. It's not like fans just take shelter, go into the grandstands like at other tracks. It's you got to leave the park. So they leave, but then here's where things get tricky, because I'm not sure everybody in NASCAR realized, or what there's communication breakdown or something. The city's not going to let people back into the park until it's totally clear of lightning threat. And since there was more potential, there wasn't any more within the 8-mile radius, but there was more that looked like it was coming, and they're not going to open up the gates and have all the police and everybody come back in, let everybody back in until they know it's going to be safe for the rest of the time. So I think NASCAR, from what I understand, looked at that along with the city, and they're like, okay, well, by the time we get everybody back in and this weather clears, from what Chicago is telling us, it's going to be 2 hours, and that's pretty much going to be darkness, and we're not going to have enough time to do the race, so let's postpone it till tomorrow. So they come back. Obviously, we wake up this morning, and it is pouring. It is pouring, right? And it was okay, well, they're going to race, and we're sitting at breakfast in our hotel, and it is downpour outside, and they're like, oh yeah, drivers to your cars, we're going to try to race. And we're looking out the window no, there's no way. There's no way they can. How can they even make a lap in this?
That's not going to happen.
Right. So this is where it gets tricky because they're still 2 laps short of halfway. And in all the time we've been around, and as far as we know, decades now, we always hear we got to get to halfway for official race, or halfway or stage 2, right?
Yeah.
That's been the rule on and off, and now it's a combination of either. This race they never got it restarted. They never even made the caution laps, and NASCAR came to the decision that in order to get on with the rest of the day and have Cup have a chance to make it, and get Xfinity out of there and be able to run the Cup race, they were calling it after 25 laps, 2 laps short of the halfway distance. That's never happened, at least since I've been around or can remember. So how do you feel about them? I mean, because a lot of teams, some teams pitted right before that. Some teams fell to the back because they thought, well, we're going to avoid chaos and have a chance when this restarts. Now, a lot of the front runners were there. Cole Custer led all 25 laps and he was declared the winner. But how do you feel about a race being called official that in the rule book, except for rare instances rule, there's nothing that covers that at all?
Well, it's covered because it's got the caveat, right? Which they love to use when they can. I guess is why they smartly put it in the rule book. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do realistically? You can't run more on Saturday because there's lightning. And so you tried to run it today. You would hope you had a little bit of a window to do something. You didn't. You can't run on Monday. I don't have a problem with it. Do I want to see this all the time? No, absolutely not. But this is a once, like you said, I don't remember this happening before. So we're just going to say once in a few decades thing. I'm okay with it. I mean, and if they were going to restart the race today, they were just going to flip on. They were just going to run under caution. They weren't going to do a race. It was going to be run a couple of laps under caution, get to halfway, and we're done. That isn't going to change the running order or anything. Anyway, all you're doing is it's a stage manufactured thing for what? If this is the finishing order in 2 more laps and it's not going to change because everyone knows not to pit, then why are we doing this? Just call it now and let's go home. The quibble. And I think it's a conversation you could have is you could say Saturday is this realistically, is there a realistic chance for us to get this race in on Sunday? And if you don't think that answer is yes, then just call it then. Just get it done with. And then you don't have to deal with all of this on Sunday and you can just move on and put it behind you. But if they really thought they had a chance to get this race in on Sunday and they thought they did apparently, then I understand why they did it the way they did.
So I do disagree with you because I think preferably, if possible, which I don't know if it would have been possible or not, given the conditions at the time, maybe it wouldn't have been. But if it was possible to run 2 caution laps super slowly and just get to halfway, just to say you got to halfway, I would prefer that because that would at least be consistent in the rule book. Now you have a race that didn't even get to halfway. It didn't finish stage 2. You award full stage points. You award full race points. F1 at Spa, that embarrassment a couple years ago, according to their rule book, if they don't only get a certain amount of laps or whatever, they award half points. This race, this is going to potentially affect the Xfinity Series playoffs. It's going to affect, the purses at the end of the year for these teams who are trying to get in to the top, whatever it is, 20 or 25, to get, bonus payouts that go to those top teams. And I hate to see it decided this way. Look, again, yeah, maybe it doesn't change the running order, but still.
So it's just semantics then?
It is, but no, it's called a rule. It's not semantics. It's a rule written in the rule book.
Well, there's also a rule in the rule book that says they can do whatever they want. And they can alter things as they go. I mean,
okay, that's fine. But let's say we're at Dover next year. Okay, we're sitting at Dover, and it's on lap 195 out of 400. And the skies open up, and they run 2 more caution laps, and they say, all right, bring them down pit road. We're 3 laps short of halfway.
But it's not.
And,
It's not.
well, hold on. Wait, let me go with my scenario. And the forecast for tomorrow is terrible. And we don't know if we're going to get this race in for another couple days.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got to get to halfway. Normally, we would have had to get to halfway. Well, now this precedent has been set. You can say, well, we can do whatever we want. So is it okay to call the race then? And say, well, this cup race didn't get to halfway, and normally that's what we do, but we did it one other time, so does this change going forward how you look at that stuff? Because it does for me. It doesn't follow the rule.
It's not this shouldn't be a precedent. You have to take a look at the circumstances here. And the circumstances are you have a circuit that was going to be literally ripped down within a day or so, and you aren't going to have this. Now, NASCAR has shown in the past they will stay and ride it out. Texas is a perfect example of the playoff race a few years ago because that race started and it wasn't resumed until Wednesday. Is that right? Thursday?
I think Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. So they have already shown they will run this. And this is you have to take into account all of the circumstances surrounding this. You're dealing with here Chicago politics, a circuit that is going to get ripped down. So no, this is a one-off. This is not a precedent, and I get it. I can understand why you may think that, but again, you have to take this all into account. And NASCAR is showing, and I wouldn't expect anything to change going forward in terms of how they conduct, what their mentality is when it comes to reaching halfway or the end of stage 2 for a race to be official.
Okay, but going back to my example, Dover lap 197, rain for the next 2 days. Are you going to be upset if they say, it's not an official race, but we're declaring this race over and declaring a winner? Are you, because that's a permanent facility? Or are you going to say, well, no, I mean, how would you react to that?
I don't want to see this happen again. I would prefer not to see this happening again unless there's some just
okay, so then you rewrite the rule to say, at temporary street courses where we may not be able to race the next day.
You don't need to rewrite the rule because you already have it. You already have the exception written in there. Like basically, it says NASCAR can do whatever they want because that's what is it?
That's for any rule. Well, so why have a rule book then?
I mean, there's people that ask that too.
I mean that's a general rule at the start of the rule book.
But again, it's a circumstantial thing. This isn't.
You know how I am about the rules. I want the rules to be followed. I want there to be integrity and consistency. I get this. I get the situation, but that's why I was saying I would have preferred to run out a couple laps.
Is there anything in the rule book about half points?
No, there's no.
Okay, so then we're just rewriting rules there then.
Well,
so which rule are we rewriting here, Jeff?
I'm not saying they should have done half points.
You said you wanted what you've been like Spa.
Well, what I'm saying is going forward.
So there should be a rule in the rule book. You want to add a rule to the rule book about half points. If a race doesn't get to the end, if for whatever reason a race doesn't get to halfway and needs to be called.
Yes, because I don't think it was fair. I don't think it's fair that Xfinity playoffs and purses and stuff is going to be potentially that this wasn't a even. So,
but if they would have ran 2 more laps under caution,
then according to the rule book,
okay,
the rule book says right there, hey, this is an official race, so everybody knows. Okay. I mean, if they had run 2 more laps, look, the whole lightning thing, it never even really rained hard. The lightning, like, it was off in the distance. We never even heard thunder, at least that I heard. So they could have run 2 more laps, maybe. And again, that would have gone against their policy as well. But this went way more against their policy than letting the cars run 2 more laps under caution with a lightning delay or lightning hold, and then bringing them down pit road. They should have tried to reach halfway on Saturday night, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see. You had to be in the room and see what pressure was being applied from the city in terms. I
don't think the city's in the room for race control.
Well, I mean,
that was a NASCAR decision. Hey, 8 miles. Again though, like, and we were talking about it on the way out last night. You said you want them to go against their lightning policy, and I'm like, well, I mean, they could have run 2 more laps, but they went again, like, talking about going against policy to cut a race short. That's not even, I don't know. That was just.
I'm much more comfortable with that than going against the lightning policy. I think if there's
what, really,
yeah, if there's lightning within 8 miles, I want them to be hard and fast on that. I don't want to play with that. People can die.
Okay, yeah, it's at Pocono, yes,
Yeah, I don't. It's hard.
This was a city with tall
I don't want.
skyscrapers.
I am
and
not
they
taking.
zapped
I am
first
not
if-
taking a chance. The policy is 8 miles. We are not messing around with lightning. We're in a park, by the way, and there's not buildings on the other side of that park.
But it wasn't that close yet.
It was within 8 miles. Was it or it wasn't? It's a yes or no question. Was it within 8 miles? It's a yes or no question.
All right.
Yeah, I'm waiting for an answer.
Oh, I see. Sure, yes.
Okay, so there you go. That's all that matters, and that's from the experts. They say that's the best thing to do. Then we shut it down. And obviously, the city agrees because they've got their own policy, which is even more stringent. So, I mean, yeah, it's a weird situation. There was a lot of things going on that you don't see in a normal race weekend. So, you can look at it, but when it comes to lightning, I ain't messing around.
All right. Let's see what else. What else jumped out to you? By the way, I will say too, like, I mean the emotional roller coaster this weekend, talking about the rain, last night and this morning. I mean, I felt so bad. I just felt so bad for everybody that it worked so hard, because it was like, those concerts got canceled. The Chainsmokers, Miranda Lambert, Charlie Crockett. This had been billed as, hey, it's a festival that has racing and music. You know what I mean? And we ran into this dude on the street last night walking back, and he looked like he was about to cry. We were talking to Mike Bagley. This dude came up to us, and I think he thought we were from NASCAR because we had
our
hard cards
credentials
on, and he's like, hey, is the concert canceled? The Chainsmokers? I only bought tickets just so I could go to the Chainsmokers concert. And we're like, yeah, it's done. And he's like, well, how do I get refunds? I haven't even gone in yet. Like, I didn't care about the racing. I just, his friends were standing nearby.
Like
yeah.
Maybe that's how they built it. I mean, it was kind of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway
well, that's
thing,
what I'm
right?
saying. So then that was such a big part of it, right? Yeah. And, it's like, I just felt so bad, for fans, for NASCAR, again, over $50 million. And this morning I'm like, is this race even going to get in? We were looking at flights for Monday. I mean, Denny Hamlin was pretty strong on Twitter, like, let's not do this, in the morning, at least, like, hey, let's try again tomorrow. And then when they were getting ready to start, he was like, let's not do this in the rain, please. It was like, is this going to all go for nothing? Like, the concerts are gone. The Xfinity race gets canceled. Is Cup going to even run with anybody around to see it? Is it going to be a rainy disaster? It's like, dude, this sucks. This really sucks. I just felt it was like such a low. And then for everybody to just sort of bounce back and have this race. I mean, geez. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from this weekend. Just
it
was hard to keep up with everything.
Yeah, I felt terrible for fans because there was a lot of people, I bet, that came just for the concerts, and that was part of the hook of this, was come for the concert and you get a race, and that's how you were going to introduce NASCAR to a group of fans who maybe, or a group of people who maybe don't even know anything about this, and that they're going to learn and they're going to like it. And I love the idea. You see it happen at the Indianapolis 500 every year with the Snake Pit. You see it other places. I love it. You see it in COTA for Formula One. I think it's a great idea. And when NASCAR went this route and they bring in the Chainsmokers and Miranda Lambert, you're like, okay, all right, these are big acts. This is good. I like what you're doing here. And then to see it go sideways like this, and there's no way to make this right at all. And the Chainsmokers had a concert later Saturday night in Las Vegas they had to be at, and so they're not coming back, and it sucks. And I don't know their policy. I don't know what the refund policies are. You would hope that people get their money back, and you feel bad for NASCAR because they invested a lot into this. They definitely have tried to go outside of their conventional norms and how they market and how they put together a race weekend. And this was a big part of it, and it just went completely sideways through no fault of their own.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like it really. I mean, this was so unprecedented. I think I saw some stats where this was going to be one of the by the time the rain was going to be done, it was going to be one of the 100 rainiest days in Chicago since like 1873, since records were being kept. This was they got more rain in one day than they had for the entire month last month, I guess. And again, this is not like this happens here very often. This was a freak rain event, and it was like NASCAR. It was like, can NASCAR ever win? You know, why does this? You know, it's just like it was brutal, but somehow, thankfully, there was a happy ending. It got salvaged. You know, I think the race at that point when the race started, just to get the race in, had it been even just a below average boring race, that would have been a win just to get it in at that point.
Just get it in and not a delay,
right.
You don't have to worry about fighting with the city.
And the fact that it was a good race,
relatively clean. There was no controversy. It was no ugliness. Yeah, it was very much a win, and it brought everything back up. And I don't know how this is going to be remembered, you know, a year from now. I don't know. I mean, you're going to remember the rain because it's hard not to, because you can't escape it. But I don't know if you're going to remember kind of that big lull there, though. I mean, the up and down of the emotions. I think you're going to like, oh yeah, it was raining, it was crazy, and the concerts got canceled, but that racing was awesome. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to, when you look back on this weekend, the positivity surrounding this is still going to be the overriding emotion from it.
Yeah, and the rain didn't cause a moment like the inaugural COTA race that was really ruined by rain. You know what I mean? With those terrible, disastrous wrecks. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of thing you would have remembered if it was rain. But I agree with you. I think 5 years from now, you'll go, oh yeah, that was when SVG came over in his one start and kicked everybody's butt, and it was the first Chicago race, and it showed street race can work for NASCAR. And I think those are the takeaways, right? So all in all, look, I know I completely recognize that people did not like this race, or that some people didn't. I've been there. I've been in your shoes because you all know how I feel about the dirt race.
You love it, right?
So, you know, it's like, I can't sit here and go, oh my gosh, no, you know, if people, you know, people aren't justified in not liking a certain kind of racing. If it's not for you, that's fine. But objectively, if you're looking at it, taking the emotion out of it, or taking your personal emotion, feelings, biases out of it, I just don't see how this could be anything but a success. This was a big weekend for NASCAR. They did it. They
pulled it off. A+.
Let's talk about the good race polls. Is it time for that?
Sure, let's do it.
This is going to be a very, 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 very challenging one, because you have a lot of factors here, Jordan. You have the race itself, which I think people liked the race largely. However, I also saw, you know, let's say for every 3 comments that I saw saying, this is awesome, I love this, great race, this was so exciting, wow, SVG really redeemed the weekend, all this stuff. For every comment like that, there was maybe another comment that was like, this is the worst thing NASCAR's ever done. I mean, people were still saying that tonight after the race. This was terrible. I hope they never do this again. People were replying to my quiet track photo they took over. Hope it's quiet forever.
Why? Why do they hate it?
Number one, people are against the street race in general. Number two, people are highly against Chicago and have feelings toward Chicago that it's too dangerous and all these things like that. And no matter what happened, they were going to hate this because it was a street race in Chicago. NASCAR belongs in Daytona on 4th of July, or I also saw NASCAR belongs in Road America. This is way better than Chicago. If you're going to go to Chicago, why don't you go to Chicagoland? All these sorts of things, swirling, right? So there's some people that are going to vote in the poll.
I'm looking at your mentions right now on your quiet track. Like they're overwhelmingly, there's a couple, but they're overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah. Okay. So you think it's more than 3 out of 4?
I'm looking. I literally it took me a long time before I saw the first negative comment.
Okay. Well, then you should pick the race is going to be in the 90s, and I'll take the win.
Yeah. Am I picking first? I won last week, so I picked first. I will take. I'm going to go 85.
Oh, no way. No way, dude. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm telling you, there's so much. There's already a built-in, I would say 15% are going to vote no automatically no matter what because they want to express their anger over whatever they didn't like about this. So they're not even going to be voting on the racing. They're going to be voting on Chicago. They're going to be voting on street racing in general. So I think you're going to lose 15% right there. And then the people that did watch with an open mind, you know, some will say, well, there wasn't enough passing for the lead, like you said. Too many, maybe some people say too many wrecks. I don't know. But I think it'll be in the low 70s at best almost. Like I just don't, I think there's going to be too many complicating factors with this. So I'm going to go ahead and say 73. I actually think it could be a little bit lower. I'd be surprised. I'll be floored if it's in the 80s, honestly. And look, I could be wrong. It'd be a pleasant surprise because I think what you did you just say 85?
85.
I think that accurately reflects like the excitement of the day. I think there was a lot of energy. The fans afterwards. And tell me about the scene afterwards. We didn't get to talk about that because I didn't go out there because I was writing. You went out there and saw how the fans got to be close.
Oh my
to the
goodness,
cars
Victory Lane was so cool. It was like Martinsville. You know, Martinsville, they bring the Victory Lane out right into the
right
front
by
stretch.
the stands. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like that, but it was better. And that they had behind Victory Lane, they had the suites and everything. So you had people kind of overhanging that. Then you had the grandstand right there. Plus you had people on the front stretch. It was electric. People were chanting. Music playing. They made it a point to have like a DJ, and you know, Simply the Best from Karate Kid. The Karate Kid theme was playing. At one point, it was cool. It felt like a big deal. Someone said to me like, "This feels like someone won a championship," and it's like, yeah, that's exactly what this feels like.
Well, and so that's you know, Alan Cavana, our friend, had gone out there too and walked around and was talking about how, you know, because look, I mean, I think it ultimately turned out to be maybe somewhere between 70 and 80% of the people there were new fans who had never been to a NASCAR race before. And every time something crazy would happen on the screen, they were very excited by what they saw. There, you know, like the wrestling term, there was a pop from the crowd, right? Like they were super into it. And, you know, it sounded like at the end of the race too, like in those final laps, like they were super cheering, super loud. They didn't even necessarily know much about NASCAR, much about what was going on necessarily, but they saw it was exciting. They were thrilled by what they saw. So, you know, again, if you're voting on that kind of thing, I could see where it'd be 85%. I am thinking that we're not going to.
Oh, there's a segment of NASCAR fans. You could have had the greatest race in NASCAR history happen today, and it wouldn't have mattered.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so
no,
that's why.
It's just, yeah, I'm done. It's just, I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. All right. Well, I don't know. I feel like there was so much to talk about. I'm sure we missed some things, and it'll be one of those podcasts where I press stop on the podcast and I go, dang it, we forgot to talk about this. But I feel like we covered as much ground as we could. And I don't know about you, but I'm freaking tired, dude.
I don't know about you, but if I get any sleep tonight, it will be a miracle. I have to write all night long, and I've got an early flight.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. But it was fun hanging out. I don't know about the roommate thing, but we survived. We didn't kill each other despite being stuck in a room for lengthy rain delays also. And now we're not going to see each other again until the end of the regular season, right? That's the plan anyway.
Daytona.
Yep. We've got, we're going our separate ways for a while. You'll be at Atlanta coming up next. So, isn't that where you did your your storage closet podcast this year with the soda behind you?
Oh, early in well, that'll be a repeat because there is no spots to do the podcast.
Oh, lovely. Well, we'll be back on YouTube for that for sure.
So we'll be back. I'll be in the storage closet again.
Okay. Well, everybody, hopefully this made sense to you. We're out of energy. So we appreciate you, though, for listening. And should be some, good little push here to the finish. for the next 8 weeks until the playoffs start. So thanks for listening, everybody, and we will talk to you next time on the Teardown.